Welcome everybody, Steve here. Today we're going to work on a 911 deck lid. Now this one here is fiberglass. It's got the little whale tail, but it has some issues. And you can see here it's kind of cracked along the edge and it goes down quite a ways. So really not too sure what's going on. I'm hoping that the fiberglass is good, but we won't know until we do a little bit of an inspection. So, gonna do a little grinding and see what the issues are. So stay tuned. Alright, you can see how thick this stuff is. Now look how many layers I've got going on here. No wonder something has broke. But where the crack is, if you've ever done body work and there's a crack, and there's a little bit of rust underneath it, it almost looks like that, like it's just delaminating underneath there. The good news is I do not see a crack in the fiberglass at all, which is really good news. I can't get at it from the back side. I can only get at it from the front, so we don't really have to do anything so far. So I'm going to continue cleaning this up, and we'll feather things out, and we'll get some good body filler, and we'll make our repair. Well, I could not be happier that it's not all broken and split. It's just the filler over here is just so thick that it was just cracking. Just a poor thin filler. That's all it was. And quite a few layers of paint. Yeah, it's amazing, that these old Porsches, you wouldn't think there'd be that many coats of paint on there, but they do get painted as well. Well, this is not going to be too bad. I'm going to get some fiber fill on there, and for my first coat, give it a little bit of strength, and then we'll build her up from there, and we won't even know. We're not going to get that started till tomorrow, so we'll see you then. So last night, I ground this down, took this down where the filler was delaminating. I kind of thought there might be a crack, but there was no crack, which was a really good sign. And why it was delaminating, I'm really not too sure. Could be just a poor filler or just a little too thick, not sure. But anyway, you don't want to touch too much of the fiberglass, but you want to get it down because you don't want any of this filler left. But now at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to feather this out a little bit with some 80 grit. That way we can get going with the fillers. Now, I'm only going to go 80 grit just a little ways, and then I'll go a little finer up here. I'm going to blend this in. I don't really want to paint the whole thing. So that is my plan. So let's feather this out, and then we can get going with the filler. So for my first coat of filler, I'm using this fiber filler, just a filler with some fiberglass in it. It's got pretty good adhesion, and I want something because it's a little thick here. So I don't want to go with the conventional filler, just in case. Use something that's just a little bit, better. It should stick good to that fiberglass. Now, because there's existing filler here, I usually file my stuff, but it takes a little while for this stuff to adhere to existing fillers that are old. So I'm going to leave this one, and I have to just sand this one down, but that's okay. I got other things to do. So you make sure you mix it well, follow the instructions. Now, I don't want to put this on really thick because I got to sand it off. I'd rather use other fillers to bring it to exactly where I want. Just going to use this to get close. Over it a couple times to eliminate pinholes. Get it as nice as you can get her. Okay, we're going to let that set up, and then we'll sand her down. Okay, it's time to sand this now. So you set up nice. I'm just using some 40 grit. You don't, I kind of like to use a little heavier grit to start with. I get it close, and then maybe I'll finish it with a little bit of 80 grit. I just don't want to spend all day sanding. And if you go with the coarser grit, you're probably going to get it a little bit straighter as well. So we'll sand that up, and then we'll put on a coat of a little finer filler. Now looking in the light, I see just a little, kind of a little mark right in here. I just scratched that with sandpaper just so I know where it's at. I'm not going to take a chance. I'm actually going to take and grind that down and put a little filler in there. Don't want to do this twice. So I'll get that done and we're pretty good. It looks really, really nice. I'm just going to put a real thin coat of regular thinner on, or filler. Make sure she's all right, and then we'll put a coat of 2-part putty on there, and I think we're ready for some primer. Looks really, really good. Feels nice and straight, but I'll look after that. Now it's time for a little finer filler. Now we did a pretty good job with the other filler, so I'm just going to keep this one thin. But it's one more layer. It's about building up the layers. Your final layer, of course, is your paint, but to get everything perfect, we'll get it almost perfect, and then we'll hit it with some primer, sand her down, and then she's ready for paint. Okay, just gonna make sure you're in view. Yeah, looks pretty good. You're gonna have some pinholes and things like that, so now we're just gonna go a little bit past where we were before. Not too much. I'll probably still sand it down so I can see through to the existing paint, and then we'll put the 2-part putty on top of that. Okay, we're all set up here. Now I'm just going to take my time to sand this. I'm not going to sit there and go down as hard as I can. I just want to make sure I get my shape right. And then after this, we're going to lightly touch it with some 80 grit and then move on to some finishing putty. Now at the 40 grit, I got close. I didn't work it all the way down, so I started taking off a bunch more paint. I'm going to use the 80 grit for that. And I'll get it a little bit nicer. I got my filling done now, but as you can see, I didn't bring my filler up to the top edge here where I feathered out on all the paint layers. You can see there's quite a few. I'm going to leave that up to the finishing putty because I think it sticks a little nicer than what your regular fillers do. And then once I sand it, then I'm done. If I bring my fillers up to here and sand it with my little coarser sandpaper, now I'm scratching this finish and I gotta start all over again. So, time for the finishing putty. I'm using a finishing putty here that's kind of made for plastics and fiberglass. A little bit more flexible. I bought it when I did the grill for this, if you saw that on my channel. But we're going to try it out on this and see how it works. Alright, we've got our two-part putty is set up and we're ready to sand it. Now I'm using 80 grit. That'll be my first grit, then I'm going to finish it off with a little bit of 150. Just take your time. Now I'm going to hit it with some 150 before we go to primer. First of all, I'm going to just give it a little shot of guide coat. That will tell me where I'm sanding, and it's going to make life a little bit easier. Just like that. You just want to take it nice and easy at this point. Okay, we got our sanded down with the 150. Really happy with that. That turned out really nice. So now we got to put some primer on this. And I'm going to use good primer. I'm not going to use something out of a spray bomb or anything like that. I've got some other things I'm going to prime. But we got to make sure that we sand. Well, I'm going to be careful about where I prime. I don't want to prime everything because I want to blend this in. But I'm going to sand the rest of this down at least 6 inches past with about 320. That way we can ensure that everything's going to stick, and anything that, you know, flies over here, this is all going to be cleared again anyway, so we'll sand that down later. So we'll just get her prepped up a little bit for primer, and then I got to go to my next shop, my other shop, to prime it. So I'll do that and finish up here. We'll see you over there. I'm just getting ready to Throw some primer down on this. Now I'm only going to prime, of course, just the areas that I was working on. I'm going to keep the pressure down low so I don't get overspray everywhere. And I'm using a fairly good primer. I'm not using something out of a spray bomb or anything like that. So get her all tacked off. I blew it off first, of course. But tack it because, you know, you don't need extra cooties on there. And you can see that I've got more to prime here as well. So get her all done at the same time. Alright, we've allowed our primer to dry really well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sand this down to the final 400 grit. First of all, I'm going to start with some 220. If you stroke with 220 first, it helps straighten everything out and it just makes everything a little quicker. So first thing you got to do, and the most important thing, is put a guide coat on. That's going to tell you everything. If you got a low spot, a pinhole, anything like that. And I've just got 220 on my little block here, and it's going to take our time. Make sure you go both ways. And just until the guide coat disappears, then we're going to put another guide coat on and then finish it with 400. Alright, we got it real close with the 220. Give her another guide coat. Finish her off with some 400 grit. Now one of the little sanding pads that I have, it's actually pretty cool. It's really flexible. Now one of the tough things to do is the concave going this way. And that just works perfect for that. So I can just lay the paper in there and then I can just lightly sand it, you know, both ways. And you're able to get in there nice and easy. That's one of the tough things to do. Nice thing about 400 grit, we're doing the whole thing because we're going to clear it. So I got a lot of work ahead of me, but it's good work. I like doing this. You want to make sure that your primer is nice and feathered in. You don't have to press too hard. Take it easy. Now I'm just sanding up some of the clear here, and on this particular job there's a lot of little imperfections that you can see, and the clear is usually thick enough that you can usually sand those out. You know, if there was something really bad and we ended up having to sand through, you know, cut the paint or something, then we just have to, you know, put a little paint on there before we clear it. But this does have a few blemishes, so we'll take care of those and make her look good. If you're sanding clear coat, make sure you be very cautious around the edges. You don't want to cut through because then you have to paint it. Alright, I got her all set up, ready to finally do a little bit of painting. I did do a little taping underneath so we wouldn't get any overspray underneath. Couple little things. I got a couple chips up here I had to sand through, so we'll have to put a little paint on there and a couple up at the front. Those are minor little things. So we'll get this all cleaned up nice, and then we can start painting. We're ready to put some color on here. Now I went down to my local paint shop and I actually picked up some, they mixed me up one in a spray bomb. And I might be thinking, well, you should probably have something better than that. Well, paint is paint. This is a base and it's a good quality base. So the clear I'm going to put on there is going to be a good clear. I'm not going to use a spray bomb for that. But if the color matches, there's nothing wrong with using a spray bomb. So I'm going to give it a couple coats, make sure that I got good coverage, and then we can go ahead, let that dry up, and then give it some clear. Well, I hope things are clear. I'd change the cameras out, ran out of batteries. So, in your second coat, you got to make sure you go a little further and kind of blend it in a little bit. You don't want a real hard, sharp line. A little water here. Just tacked her up again. Now I'm ready to clear it. I'm going to show you what I use. This here is just an automotive art clear. Quite like it. Polish is nice. So I'll get rigged up and see how she looks. Looking good. Got a couple little, let's go this way. There we go. Looking good. Couple little dust specks there. I'm just going to polish them out, and I think she's going to be fine and dandy. The repair looks really good. No more crack. So there you go. It wasn't that tough.